So there we go. So thank you all for joining us. I'm glad that you guys are all here and interested in the DARCA legislation. Going to start with some updates. I'm going to fill you all in on the process that we kind of go through. I realize that we started jumping into legislation and you guys may not know the process that we go through and how we filter the bills that we support and even just kind of monitor. So we're going to go through that and then we can go through some specifics of some legislation. So a really quick update is Representative Arndt is now mayor-elect for the city of Fort Collins. So she is going to resign from her representative seat on Friday, and she will pass all her bills to Representative Catlin. So just so you guys kind of know that. Moving into the DARCA process, this is a really iterative process. We just really kind of learn as we go. This is something fairly new for DARCA. This is the first time we've been this involved in legislation, really monitoring the bills instead of reacting to the bills. So we see that as growth and we're really excited about it. It's actually a lot of fun for me to monitor all of these and talk to all of you about your thoughts on them. So it is iterative. I know yesterday you got the email about, well, you probably got 2 emails from me about the legislative tracker and that sort of thing. So it's all new and bear with us as we make some changes. And if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it, but just trying to make it easy for you guys and hopefully easy for the board as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the filter that we use. We have quite a few bills in the legislature right now. It's several hundred. I lost count a few weeks ago. But for one person, i.e. myself, to monitor all of those and keep you up to date on every single one of them isn't quite DARCA's mission. So our mission is really driven by a filter, is what we call it. And if it helps water delivery systems and their operations or their budgets, that's the pieces of legislation that we will track and we will follow. You will notice on the legislative tracker that there's some that I put on there that don't necessarily follow water. Aquatic nuisance species, they're kind of adjacent to water, but that's in there. But there's also some other things that the board just really wanted everybody to know about, like the soil health bill and a couple others, like the drought resiliency office and that fund. Those don't tie to water, but those might be things that you might keep on your radar and can reach out to your legislators about if you have anything that you want to share with them. So we'll just go right into the discussion. Feel free to stop me or ask questions or whatever throughout this process. Don't want it to be a lot of me just talking at you, but that might be what it is, and that's okay too. But definitely want to hear your thoughts and your questions. So if you have any of those, feel free to use the chat or just to stop me, interrupt me, whatever it takes to get me to stop talking so that you can get your voice heard too. I do want to also mention that, you know, when we also use that filter, we have about a couple hundred members. And while they are primarily ag, they also represent municipal, environmental, recreational and industrial, kind of all spectrums of water. So we don't pursue, or we try not to pursue anything that will benefit one sector and really hurt another. Your voices are important, so we can take these back to legislators and stakeholder meetings as kind of one voice. But if I'm not hearing from members, then we use our board to vote for that, and we use their discretion. Much like the legislator process, you can speak to your legislators, but if they don't hear from you, then they often vote how they see fit as well. So we kind of mirror that process. All right, so moving forward, legislation for discussion. So the dredge and fill bill came out, I believe on April 9th, the last day to introduce something. It hasn't really been assigned a committee or anything to my knowledge. As of yesterday, they didn't have sponsors on the bill. It's somewhat contentious. There's a lot of thoughts on it. There's kind of the camp that really feels like we need this program and they can't operate without it, and that the Army Corps of Engineers won't fill that void because it's not their job. And then there's these this other group or camp of people who really feel like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If the Army Corps of Engineers is taking control of it and taking care of it now, let's just leave it in there until we figure it out, or until the Biden administration creates new rules, and then we can tackle it then. So I've been involved in the stakeholder meeting since, I think it's early 2020 when they started all of those stakeholder meetings, really gathering data and ideas, figuring out what those gap waters would be if our stay was removed. And we found out a few months ago that that was removed and will take place, I believe, next week, coming up here soon. So because the stay has been removed or will be removed, we're going to have these gap waters. And they really want to make sure that they have the authority to act on those and to create a program that will work. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure I know the answers to them, but hear your feedback or answer questions about the dredge and fill bill.
No question, just a quick comment.
Yeah.
I actually really appreciate the fact that you are watching it and try to keep track of it for us, because for many of us, it's something that's can be a little over our heads. So I know my ditch company groups, kind of being able to look on the DARCA website and see updates there has been really helpful. So I just want to say thank you, Amber.
Oh, thanks, Don. I appreciate that.
Amber, I have a comment pertaining to the dredge and fill.
Yeah.
I keep asking if it's been funded, and according to those people we had on our website on the other day on our thing, they were indicating it has not been funded. And I know where the state is on money right now. So the biggest concern I have is if they do start some type of a bill, how are they going to pay their staff to monitor and do what they were saying? So I think that's where the big rub comes right at this time.
Yeah, that makes sense, Manny. I think they're hoping that the numbers that they've kind of proposed in the draft legislation will kind of make up for some of those gaps that they see in funding. But you're right, it is a big ask. And I think they're projecting, I don't know, about 8 to 10 projects that would really bring in big funds. That may not be enough to cover it. So yeah, that's definitely a question. I'll keep monitoring that question for you, Manny. Do we have anything else on the dredge and fill bill? One thing I will mention too with the dredge and fill, they're really trying to keep ag exempt. So they're trying to make sure that you can maintain your ditch system and you can do all of those things without getting a permit. But we'll make sure that that stays in there because ag needs to stay exempt. All right, we'll go ahead and move down. And all of these are on our website under the Outreach and Legislation tab. And then also all of you should have received the link to the Google Docs too, which will update as soon as I update it. So you guys have access to both. And I can share my screen if that's more helpful as well. So House Bill 21-1260 is providing stimulus money to the Colorado Water Conservation Board because of the funds that we received from the stimulus package, partnered with the fact that over the past year, they really were stringent on our budget. We actually have a little bit more in the general fund than we were planning on. So those are really good things, especially in this bill. They're going to allocate $20 million to the Colorado Water Conservation Board. 15 million of that goes to the Colorado Water Plan implementation. So really that goes to the Colorado Water Plan grants and anything associated with implementing the Colorado Water Plan, which is great news because we were really thinking that we weren't going to see any money in that for about 3 to 5 years. The other 5 million goes to water supply reserve funds, and that grant program is distributed amongst the roundtables across the state. So that is stimulus money. It's a one-time infusion of money, but it's much needed, especially for ditch companies who found out that, wow, I only have a couple months to fix this, and now I can't fix it because there's no money either in my budget or in the state budget. So that's really good news for some of our ditch companies. I know there were some questions on Monday that were asking, well, we're spending a lot of money and what are we going to do with all of it? And what does that do to us as a whole? But I ultimately think that this is a good place to put the money if we are going to take the stimulus money and put it somewhere. Do we have any questions about 1260?
I have a concern about 1260 because one of the things that worries me on behalf of the ditch companies is the fact that there's a time limit on being able to use the money, and everything has to be fully funded by I think middle of 2023. And sometimes it's a little challenging to get all of your ducks in a row and get your projects ready to go and get them fully completed within that time frame for that grant money. So I'd like to see the timeline be a little bit longer for use of that money.
Perfect. I'll see if we can make that happen. Anything else on 1260? Perfect. So we'll move right along to Senate Bill 234. It's the Ag and Drought Resiliency Fund. So this really creates a fund within the Colorado Department of Ag. They're going to take money from the general fund as well, $3 million of that. That goes towards activities that promote the ability of the state to anticipate, prepare for, mitigate, adapt to, or respond to any event, trend, or climatological disturbance related to drought or climate. So I pulled that directly from the bill. Some of the ideas that they have that might contribute to those activities would be a hay bank. We know that when producers, specifically the cattle and other meat producers, if they don't have enough hay themselves, or there's a shortage in general, we need to figure out how we can store hay from people who have an excess, or perhaps get a financial or technical assistance to get feed from outside of Colorado to Colorado. So there's that piece to it. There's support and recovery of grazing lands following a wildfire or drought, and then the technical assistance to prepare and plan for future drought. I'm involved in the Ag Drought Advisors kind of group, and we're thinking that something like that could be put in there, that sort of thing. So those are some of the ideas. All of those things will be decided by the Department of Natural Resources, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and the Governor's Ag Impact Task Force to see which is most efficient and effective. I haven't had any caffeine today. I don't think you guys can tell, but so there's that. Do we have any questions on Senate Bill 234, the Ag and Drought Resiliency Fund? Perfect. We'll go to Senate Bill 220. It reverses the transfers of severance tax dollars. There was actually a mistake in the appropriation of funds. Originally, they appropriated funds to the Species Conservation Service, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Aquatic Nuisance Fund, the Water Efficiency Grant Program, the IBCC, and the WSRF. And they realized they didn't have enough money to operate in that fund. So this bill takes it all back. So that was a mistake that was made, and this is just fixing that mistake. I don't know who made this mistake or how that happened, but this is a fix to that mistake. Do we have any questions about that? Perfect. So we have House Bill 1242, which is the Ag Drought and Climate Office. DARCA will not be taking a position on this office or this bill, but we just wanted to let you guys know it kind of has a nexus to water, so we kind of wanted to monitor it. It basically just establishes another office in the Department of Ag. Soil health programs could be in this office and probably will be in that office. So there's just some restructuring within CDA itself. This also authorizes them to accept gifts, grants, and donations. And then it annually transfers $500,000 from the Tier 2 Severance Tax Operational Fund to this new fund until July 2029. So like I said, DARCA is not taking a position. We are somewhat monitoring it just in case it happens to start pulling in more water projects or something. But that's that project or that office. We are also monitoring the soil health bill, which would fit into this climate office. Do we have any questions about the Ag, Drought, and Climate Office or the soil health bill? I wasn't planning on speaking on the soil health bill, but I absolutely can if anybody's curious. I know some people in the water community were curious on Monday. Perfect. Everybody's very quiet today. We have Senate Bill 235, which provides additional funding for programs to CDA, again, to support the increased efficiency of ag operations, and it makes an appropriation. So they'll make 2 appropriations, a one-time transfer from the general fund of $3 million to the Ag Value Added Cash Fund, which will really augment the department's Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Program, or ACRE 3, and then transfer $2 million to the Conservation Services Division, which will help fund the soil health program and the administration of that program, which is also tied to the soil health bill. So if the bill passes, that will help fund that. And then there's also a little piece in there saying that they have to report on expenditures to the Office of State Planning and Budgeting and to the General Assembly. So we should know what happens from that. Do we have questions on that? Okay, so we have some more, a couple more bills to get through. These are a little bit more forest health and aquatic species related. So we have Senate Bill 237, that's the Colorado Forest Health Council. There is currently an advisory council in the State Forest Service kind of tied to CSU. This would create a Colorado Forest Health Council within DNR that would report directly to the governor and General Assembly. They're hoping to make it a little bit more effective and integrated. This council would have 23 members on it. I won't go through all 23, but that includes the executive director of the DNR office, the state forester, state conservationist, an economic development person tied to forest, a tribal person. There's some science and research. So they're really trying to get a whole group of people together all throughout this. I've heard some people say that this will get rid of the current Forest Health Advisory Council. And I've also heard other people saying, no, that's not the case. It's in addition to, just in case it doesn't get reviewed. So I haven't done the research to figure that out, but I do know it will create another council. Any questions on that? Okay, we have Senate Bill 221, the Forest Restoration Wildfire Risk Mitigation Grant Program. It removes the $1 million limit for the grant share of individual projects, and then adds the requirement that when the technical advisory panel considers hazardous fuel reduction projects, that they show preference to applications that are adopting local measures that reduce risks to people, property, and infrastructure. That's pretty self-explanatory too, I think. We're probably not going to take any positions on the forest health bills unless members really feel it's necessary. We'll probably just monitor those bills, but the board hasn't made a decision on that yet. Then we have House Bill 1226, which is the aquatic nuisance bill. It directs CPW to investigate methods that other states are using with respect to the location and operation of those check stations. And then it authorizes the peace officers to stop and inspect for those species. And then it goes a step further and it prohibits a person who encounters a check station from refusing to stop. And I think an amendment was made over the past week or so that actually made it an offense. I can't remember what level of offense, but there's money tied to it if you do refuse to stop for those check stations. Do we have any questions on 1226? Perfect. That's all that I have for you guys today, unless there's some other ones. I can update you, I guess, on the Watershed Right Mutual Ditch Corporation bill. We talked a lot about that bill at the beginning of our meetings. That was introduced to the Senate Ag Committee on March 24th. So it moved through the House and is now into the Senate. I believe it's going pretty smoothly. I don't think very many people are opposing that. We have House Bill 1043, which is the study of underground water storage maximum beneficial use. That's by Representative Holtorf. That's just concerning the study of underground storage. It's just a study. It's not actually performing the storage of that water. That was sent to appropriations on the 1st of April. The Colorado Water Conservation Board Construction Fund projects, which is Senate Bill 189, was amended to appropriations on April 1st. The conservation easement tax credit modifications, House Bill 1233, was sent unamended to the House Finance on April 5th. I think that's about it. We have some greenhouse gases stuff in there. Soil health is in that legislative tracker. Funding for Colorado Proud. So we have several in there as well, but I would like to open it up for anybody who has questions, comments, concerns about the way we are handling these bills and tracking them, or about bills that maybe aren't on our radar, or any particular bills that you guys want to talk about.
Amber, I'm very pleased that you have these on the website, and they're very easy to track and follow. I just would wish that more people would look at it in our organization and respond to you. This is the only way that we can see how a bill impacts an individual ditch company, is by the outreach that you're providing, and I really commend you on that.
Thank you, Manny. Maybe it's that they trust us so much that they don't have cause for concern to join us. I don't know why they're not joining us. That was just the top of my head answer, but thank you, Manny. I appreciate that.
Amber, this is Dallas.
Yeah.
On House Bill 1233, that was in committee last Monday, and I actually testified some on it, and I just wondered if the organization has taken a stance on what that might mean to some water entities, such as mutual ditch companies, as I understand it, having the ability to maybe do a conservation easement donation on any property they might own or acquire.
So we are just monitoring at that point. At this point, I know a couple people had some comments from the board, but they haven't gotten those to me yet. So the board hasn't come to a full conclusion. So I can make my recommendations, but the board ultimately makes the decision. So we haven't heard back on their decision yet. I hear it's a decent thing. I think some of the comments were in some of the small details, and I don't know what those are. Are you in favor of it, I'm guessing?
Yes, I am in favor of it. The reason I am so much in favor is because it just allows another instrument for any farmer or rancher to be able to bring another value-added product into their program, such as a conservation easement tax credit. And for example, a young family that's wanting to do a conservation easement on land that has water attached, this bill will actually increase the funds available to them from the 75% cap to 90%. And a lot of times that is the difference between getting a subordination on their loan or their lender not approving a conservation easement. So it's just another tool to me that allows young people especially to consider conservation easements on their land that has water tied to it. And then they can craft the conservation easement language where they will have the ability to enter into a water leasing program, even though their water is tied to the land through an easement, an encumbrance on the deed. They can still craft it to where they will have the ability to enter into the 3 and 10-year leasing program. And to me, it's just another possibility to keep water attached to the land, attached to rural communities, and be another impediment in the way of buy and dry and taking all of that out of the community. So I'm in favor of it, yes. I know there are always downsides to every bill, but there aren't many to this one that I can see.
Thank you, Dallas. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any thoughts about that bill? I'd love to hear them. That one we haven't heard much comments on, so it'd be great to hear any additional comments. Perfect. I will pass your comments, Dallas, onto the board and we'll see if we can make a decision. I'm hoping that we make a decision by Friday on some of these bills, but we'll see how that timeline plays out.
Thank
Amber,
you,
I
Amber.
might, excuse me, Amber, I might ask Dallas, what was the attitude of the committee when you testified? Were they supportive, or could you tell?
It, Manny, it turns into what I've testified several times in committees on conservation easement bills. And it's the same trite thing that happens for years. There's a group out there that is lobbying to correct the fraudulent easements that happened back in the early 2000s. And anything that's tied to conservation easement tax credit, that's dredged up. And that caused a couple of our representatives to not be in favor of the bill simply because it's a conservation easement tax credit. And even though the concerns they have been addressed long ago, there still seems to be resistance to it because of that. But it passed out of committee on only 2 dissenting votes to it. And both of them said once they had more information, they would probably be in favor of it. And the reason they dissented was because of that very thing, that they didn't like the whole setup of conservation easements. And I could tell through the testimony that was because they just needed more information. So overall, it was extremely positive.
Thank you for that.
As I'm sure you're aware, it really opens up flexibility for anybody that's in our organization, any mutual ditch companies or water entities. It gives a lot more latitude for them to enter into the possibility of doing a conservation easement as a ditch company. So I think it's a very positive thing.
Thanks, Dallas. We appreciate that. Anybody else have anything that they want to share or pose a question to? Perfect. Well, I think that concludes kind of our meeting. You can always check that legislative tracker on Google, or you can check our website every week. I try to keep it updated at least weekly. I don't do a daily update, but I do weekly. So make sure you keep an eye out there. If you have any questions, or if you think, oh man, I don't know if they're tracking this bill, send it to me so we can make sure that we get it on our radar. So just make sure that you know that I am always open for feedback or conversations of any sort, and I'm always here. So thank you all. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a really great day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Amber.
much.
Hi, thank you.